Dude. Holy crap. It's so shallow that they're gonna spook when we drill, but finally. I don't remember what the actual temperature is today, but the real feel was like -29. And we've been fishing panfish deep in the last few videos. Wanted to switch it up because there's two different bites going on right now. You can fish those deep basin fish, or you can fish fish that are up in shallow weeds. There's fish there all season long. And then when you catch a big one, you don't have to kill it because it's not coming out of that deep water getting barotrauma. So like I said, it's frigid. We've been trying to figure out a place to set up the house. It's a big mile-long weed flat, and all you can do is drill and drill and drill. One guy on the auger, the other guy scanning with sonar or checking depths with a flasher. And as you can see, finally, we found an area where it goes from like 6-7 foot down to like a 1 foot drop. Like it's maybe 8 feet over here, which doesn't sound like much of a change, but in a big giant weed flat, any little drop or change like that can hold fish. And we're just finding scattered weed clumps. And these fish are just cruising in between them. So we're gonna hole hop outside as long as we can survive and handle it, and dial in the best spot to set up a hub house where hopefully we'll pick off some big bluegills while there's daylight. And then we're gonna wait for the crappies to slide up in the evening, and I'll talk a little bit more about that after I catch a fish, finally. Here comes one. Not very big, but as long as it's not a dinky perch, I will be happy. Dang it. I don't care if it's -30, I can't fish with gloves on. Although my weather app said 15 minutes of air contact is guaranteed frostbite. What do they know though? We'll go poke some holes like 15 to 20 feet that way where we see them constantly working back and forth, and it's such shallow water, less than 7 feet, they're definitely gonna spook out of here when we drill holes. But if we know that they're working this little chunk of this area, that's what we're looking for. Kind of like Winnipeg greenbacks. You're kind of just looking for like the area, the 1 acre that those fish are in and working. Same thing with this big mile-long weed flat. We're trying to find a section of it that's holding fish and having them cycle through. Let's get to catching. Let's get this figured out. 20 feet, 30 feet. So you saw those fish on LiveScope. I'm gonna poke one hole. Drop down LiveScope, and see how far those fish push in the shallow water. You know, if it's only 30 feet or something and they're gonna keep working this area, cool. If we drill a hole and they're gone, then I don't know, it's gonna make the decision of whether to set up the fish house or not a lot harder. Ton of ice out here. Oh. Giant weed clump fish. This is us. Right on the other side of the giant clump is where those fish just slid to. So they slid 20 to 30 feet on the other side of that clump. If I go drill over there, they're gonna slide 30 feet the other way. So we're, I don't know, time-wise, we might almost be better off drilling the holes for our hub right now and getting it set up, so that when the fish work back over here, we're not drilling. What? Oh no, my drag was mucked up. We got rid of the skunk, and look at the fish below us. I'm gonna quick sneak this guy back. And the idea is you gotta keep them under you, like jumbo perch type thing. You can see there's 2 more on the graph right now, and they're just so neutral and negative on this big cold front that normally I would use like an ultralight rip and wrap, call fish in, but they're cold, they're not happy, they're moving so slow. This one's coming in hot. It's small though. Oh, nice job, bozo. Oh, hey, a crappie. Alright, I think the size is gonna get bigger, but cool sign. Crappies are finally starting to show up now that it's getting closer to sunset. And like I said before, this is just a big shallow weed flat, and I look for big giant weed flats with good green weeds still, and I set up kind of close to deep water if possible. So a few hundred yards away, it dips down into like 25-30 feet. So we poked a bunch of holes along the edge of this flat until we finally started graphing fish, and you can catch bluegills all day. Your best shot at a big bluegill is gonna be right at sunset. Like the flash bite walleye thing, that's your best shot at a 9-10 inch bluegill. Is that kind of power hour, that 30 minutes at sunset. But the cool thing is setting up on these big weed flats like this at the same time that those big bluegills come in, and as soon as the bluegills kind of stop showing up, the crappie's sliding. And I don't know if they're roaming that weed edge, if they're in the basin and then they're sliding up, but right at sunset all of a sudden they make an appearance. And so I'm really pumped to see that fish, because on this lake when you catch a crappie, they're either that or they're like 14-15 inches. There's kind of no in between. And hopefully some of those big dogs show up. But life is finally showing up. We just took getting that first fish to bite, tear up that waxy down there, get some commotion to bring them to us. And I don't know what else you can do when it's -30 and hole hopping is just not an option. So I set up on green weeds, near deep water, big flats, drill some holes, and once you start graphing fish or you catch some fish, you can hunker down, and now it's just going to be a waiting game. Wait for them to come to us. All right, here come a pair. Slowly work up, miss them just like that. Just swing and make sure there's nothing there. That's usually my favorite way to do it. So that's definitely something that I didn't invent. I've seen actual pros do it, but they call it like the double bite or whatever, where on tough bites, you don't set the hook when you feel like right now. Okay, there, he bit it. And I just waited a second, and normally you're like trying to set the hook as instant, as fast as you can, but when the fishing is just negative, neutral, super tough, that very first bite that you feel is them just like grabbing the tip of that plastic or the tail of that waxworm, and if you wait a second, that second bite is when they're like actually finishing eating the bait. And obviously I missed the last 3 or 4 fish before that one in a row, because you feel that tap and it's just like boom, nothing there. But they're just grabbing the tail of it. So I'm gonna try to be a little more patient. Goose fraba, settle down, let them eat it for a sec. See if we can get a few of these fussy things to bite when it's -30. Oh, he ate it. Oh, I thought he was better. Yeah, this is a bluegill, and it's a good one. Okay. It's not a giant, but it's moving in the right direction. And I don't care. This could be a 12-inch bluegill, and it wouldn't look big and cool on camera. I don't know how people do it. Hide your fingers behind the fins. Hold it way out. But no, it's I don't know, it's probably like a 9-inch gill. Decent, nice, solid fish. And when the going gets tough, tiny little tungsten tubby with a waxworm. And I normally start with bigger, more aggressive baits, plastics. I just knew it wasn't going to be one of those days when it's this cold. So I did the opposite of what I normally do today. Start with the tiny little tungsten, single waxworm, and just try to catch anything that comes into the cone angle. Chasing out. There's one. Finally. Oh, it's a bluegill. Are you kidding me? I thought for sure that was a crappie. I would have bet money that was a crappie. I just switched up to a little glow VMC wax tail, thinking my bluegill window was over and I wanted something glow because it's getting dark for these crappies moving in. And now I feel a little bit dumber about missing those last couple fish because they could have been big bluegills instead of crappies. I feel so violated. Here they come. Are you kidding? What is going on? Who says bluegills don't bite after dark? Just had 3 fish come on the graph. Looked like crappies. It's an hour and a half past sunset. They're big bluegills on this shallow weed flat. Of course, it's not gonna look big, but that's a big bluegill for around here. Coming in after dark, moving super slow. Got little glow baits on for crappies. There's another one down there. Hey, I actually got it. Feels good not to miss a fish. You think it's a big bluegill again? What? Dude, after dark bluegills are a thing. I just glowed that up and dropped down on his head. So funny, you just don't catch many bluegills after dark, but when you do, like that's the smallest one you catch. Just waiting for the crappies to slide in 2 hours after sunset, it's still bluegills. What? Alright, let's talk about midwinter panfish locations. So there's kind of 2 different bites going on right now. The deep basin thing, which is no longer a secret, right? Those deep holes, fish in that 30 feet, even up to 40 feet of water. Edges of those deep holes and depressions. Fish are in there all winter long. You find them in there as soon as water temps dip out of the 50s down into the upper 40s in the fall. And fish will hang out there all year long, and actually as the season goes on, more and more fish will pile into them as oxygen levels decrease. And the problem is every fish you catch out of deep water dies. For sure everything over 30 feet, if you let it go, even if it swims away, it's gonna die. And a lot of the times you can see those same bear trauma effects in 24 feet of water. 23 even sometimes. And so you kind of got to catch what you want to eat, keep, and get out of there when you've got enough for a meal. But the good news is there's a second bite that goes on all season long, and that's shallow weed fish. I might have one eyeing me up. I'm not even going to look because then I won't be able to talk. But there's a shallow weed bite that goes on all season long too. It's not just an early ice thing. On a lot of these lakes, those weeds will stay standing in green almost all season long. And that's kind of the key, is finding those good weeds. If they're brown, dead, laying down, a lot of the times you're not gonna have the minnows and the bait and the bugs and stuff around that keep fish around. So the key is finding those good green weeds. And there's a couple things you can do. If you've got a LiveScope unit, a Mega Live, you can look for those standing mounds of weeds on your sonar. Like when we drilled here today, the first fish that we graphed, there was 2 big weed pockets, a little depression in the middle, and we saw 5 or 6 fish sitting right in between those weed pockets. So that's one way to do it. Not everybody has live sonar. So if you have an underwater camera, it's really great to go around, drill holes, underwater camera around, look for good green standing weeds. Not everybody has an underwater camera or wants to mess with one. So then what you do is you drill with your traditional flasher or 2D sonar, and you'll see depth changes on weed flats. Or maybe it's 7 feet, all of a sudden 4 feet. Well, it's probably not jumping up to 4 feet deep. That's probably the top of a big patch of weeds. And so that's what I'll do, is I'll go to these big weed flats. Stuff that's got deep water close, but big giant expansive weed flats, and I'll drill a loop of sometimes 30, 40 holes, sometimes 70 to 100 holes. And what that lets me do is, for one, the first holes that I drilled in that loop might have been drilled 20 minutes ago by the time I do 70 holes all the way around. So I'll start fishing where I drilled, and then the loop lets me slowly hole hop until I can fish my way all the way back and always be fishing a new hole. And then the important thing with that is I've got this big long line, and so I'm looking for differences in depth, like I mentioned earlier, where it might be 7 feet, 7 feet, 6 feet, 5 feet, or the opposite. It might be getting a little bit deeper. It might be 6 feet, 7 feet, 7 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet, back up to 7. So I'm looking for those differences in these large flats where maybe it's a little bit of a dip or a depression, or the opposite. If it gets shallower, that means there's maybe more standing weed growth. And the whole loop thing too, just constantly being able to fish new holes all the way back. And what I'm trying to figure out is an area on that large flat that I want to focus in on. And today it's negative 29 or 28, whatever reel feel, frigid. Hole hopping outside was not enjoyable. And we did it just long enough to find an area that had fish. And we actually watched these fish on LiveScope. We'd drill a hole, they'd be 40 feet that way. Go over there, try to drill a hole on top of them, then they're 30 feet back this way. And so you can either drill 100 holes and hop around until you find them, or you can drill in one spot in an area that you know has fish and hunker down. And when it's negative 28, we're hunkering down today. And I mean, I would say we sat here for probably 30 minutes before this fish finally pushed back through. And midwinter fish, just moving slow, tough bite. I don't know, every time we drill a hole, they were just pushed out of here. So sometimes you are better off setting up shop, sit and stay and make them pay and wait for them to come to you. So typically these shallow weed flat bites are gonna be on super clear water lakes, and that's just because the weeds tend to grow so much better. A lot of the dirty water, stained water lakes, tannin stained water, there just isn't good weed growth, and the weeds that are growing are kind of that choked out shallow junk that fish don't like to be in. But these lakes with zebra mussels, where you've got water clarity of maybe 8 feet all the way out to 20 feet deep, that's where you get those really good cabbage and coontail clumps. This type of stuff that has enough sunlight reaching it that it'll stay alive and hold fish all season long. I'm not doing big rips and snapping it, but I'm just doing tiny little micro wiggles. Like we had the camera down, turn the light on, and you can see that there's just bugs and invertebrates. So the bug thing isn't just a deep basin, soft bottom mud deal. We're up here in 7 to 9 foot weeds on a flat and a pretty hard bottom, and there's little bugs and stuff all over in the water. So don't just get focused on like, oh, bugs hatching after dark. That's got to be deep mud basins. There's all sorts of stuff for them to eat up here, and for minnows and other forage and prey for them to eat and hone in on. So I never stop moving that bait, even if it's just the tiniest little wiggle, and whether that's gonna look like a crappie minnow to them or one of the bugs that you can see on the underwater camera where it's just constantly pulsing in the water. I'm just never stopping moving that bait. But I have noticed that if you get too jiggy with it and you're really getting darty and unnatural, those fish will just turn around and spook off out of there. But it's also a reason that I think it's important after dark for panfish to use a waxworm or a euro or whatever, something that has some scent, so that when those fish are close, it just helps seal the deal. Finally. All right, what do you think it is? After dark bluegill. What? It's a hen, female. Do the males have that big bright orange breast? The females look like this one. So if you want to get out and chase some midwinter panfish, you don't have to just go look for the deepest hole in the lake. You can go get on a big expansive weed flat And you really don't have to go drill 100 holes and hole hop around. In that shallow water, you're gonna push those fish around so much. So the key is finding good weeds, finding areas with fish, hunker down, set up shop, and wait for them to roll through to you. Oh yeah, and bluegills will bite after dark. Myth busted. I love tiny pike. I love them so much.